up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked the young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. 8.6 beer. Intense by nature. And Locage. If the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Locage. It's gonna be sick.
Good evening, everyone. Tony Marinaro is still on the shelf, so enter the Hebrew Hammer. The Canadiens are currently playing in the third period in Denver against the Colorado Avalanche. We're going to introduce our guest very, very shortly, but first, the Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. They are a full leading service of logistics provider and serving all of North America, driven to be different. Energy Transportation Group, 8.6 beer, intense by nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark, as well as Locage. If the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you go back to Locage because the menu will surprise you. All right, without further ado, we're already a minute into the period. We're going to introduce from Habs Eyes on the Prize, Jared Book. Jared, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I mean, how did I do there? I mean, I had to get right into it because as the intro was playing, the third period started. I feel like I did a good job there.
Yeah, it was quick and rushed, and it was good. It was good.
Yeah, exactly.
Fast paced. Exactly.
Exactly. Really fast paced, like that second period, because it felt like that thing just flew right by.
Yeah. I have a 15-month-old at home, so like if I take my eyes off the screen for a few minutes, and it's like the period's already gone. So yeah, it was a fast period, and then getting ready for this during the intermission, and it's already going.
Yeah, already going, and the Canadiens already have a delayed penalty awaiting for them once they touch the puck. So, I mean, let's start here. I mean, Anthony Richard, he scores his first career NHL goal in his second game with the Canadiens. Hometown boy, just what a story.
Yeah, and this is what's interesting about this is really the Laval Rocket effect, right? Anthony Richard played Laval in the playoffs last year. He made an impression. And Laval made an impression on him. The crowds during the playoffs, he said it was a reason why he wanted to go join the Montreal Canadiens organization. And he said that he had a chance to he saw a path to the NHL. Sure enough, he leads the AHL in scoring and comes to the NHL and scores in the second game. And we really haven't seen the NHL effects of Laval stocking up on French Canadian local talent, and Anthony Richard might be that first kind of that trophy to show for what that can bring.
Well, Anthony Richard giveth and Anthony Richard taketh away, because he takes the penalty, and just like that, bang, former Montreal Canadian Arturi Lehkonen scores a power play goal. So it is 1-1 between the Colorado Avalanche and the Montreal Canadiens in this third period.
I don't believe you, Matt. Arturi Lehkonen isn't allowed to score power play goals. At least that was a
yeah,
story during his 6 years in Montreal, right?
It's funny. He's not allowed to score power play goals, but it seems like these days nobody's allowed to score power play goals on the Canadiens. So
yeah, well, in fairness to Arturi, I don't think he played on the power play in Montreal, so it's not really his fault.
That's it. Exactly. But it's really nice to see he's found a nice home for himself in Colorado. Just what a story, because there's just so many great things going on in this game, because there's Anthony Richard on the Canadian side, there's Arturi Lehkonen on the Colorado side, who was such a big part of that Stanley Cup run 2 years ago, and then he wins a Stanley Cup last year with the Avalanche, and now it doesn't look like he was just that rental pickup. It looks like he found himself a home for a number of years.
Yeah, this is a trade that has the potential to work out for both teams. It's sad to say, or sorry, like I feel bad saying this, but there's a lot of pressure on Justin Barron, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because and it's no fault of his own. It's just that Arturi Lehkonen is showing what he was, and you can see the similar kind of thing to Tyler Toffoli, who was traded as well, right? Like, it's trading guys that had term, can come back to, they're good players, right? Like that's the whole point of trading these guys. And Colorado definitely is not going to feel bad if Justin Barron, becomes a top four defenseman in the NHL. But Montreal definitely probably needs that to feel good about that trade. There obviously there is a second round pick as well in 2024. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there was anybody. It's very similar to the Lars Eller trade in my mind, where any Canadiens fan who was paying attention to the team knew that Arturi Lehkonen, where if you went to a contender, was going to make them the Stanley Cup champions. I think I said, even before the trade deadline, months before the trade deadline, I said that the winner of the trade deadline is going to be the team that trades for Arturi Lehkonen, because he just has that. He just felt like that kind of player who would score the Stanley Cup winning goal. And sure enough, Lars Eller did that a few years earlier. And it's just, it was a perfect fit. He's a guy who can play with skill, and he can be responsible defensively. And I think that it's a perfect fit for this Colorado team. Obviously with their injuries now, having that versatility is great, but even when healthy, having him with McKinnon or last year with Kadri, like, no matter who you put him with, he's a weapon. And you saw that a bit in his time at Montreal, especially you mentioned the final run when he was with the top line of Philip Deneau, right, and Jake Evans at times, and Brendan Gallagher. Like, I just feel like he was never really allowed to play to his top potential in Montreal. Just similar to like how Lars Eller was never done that.
Right.
So, and it's just the similarities are plentiful, but I'm happy that he's found a place and that he's having success, because he's a player that should be appreciated for what he brings.
Well, that's it. And he was never one. I mean, it's a kind of a stereotype when it comes to Finns in Montreal, and the Finnish hockey players. They don't say much in the media. He was a man. He was a player of very few words, Arturi Lehkonen, just like Yoel Armia is. It's funny because whenever we worked on when I worked on the radio, we would always say, carrying a press conference, Yoel Armia stands up to the mic and we go, "Ooh, the sun's going to be, what's the over under on this one? 3 minutes? 3 minutes to breeze through 6 questions here." So he never, but the other side of that is that he was a player that never struck me as someone who complained. It was, wherever you put me, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do whatever you need me to do. Just kind of like the perfect switchblade for the Montreal Canadiens, and, even more so for the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. When you have a lineup like Colorado does, at least when healthy, having a player that you can just put wherever is such a benefit to have. Like, the good teams take advantage of that, right? Like, and Montreal, even right now, has, like, Kirby Dach is kind of like that, right? Like, no matter what line Kirby Dach is on right now, it's going well. And whether, usually it's the Suzuki Caulfield line, but even when he's played center, he's looked much better, especially recently, compared to the beginning of the season. So yeah, I think that having guys like that can just go up and down the lineup is so clutch for a team that's contending for a cup and going to win a cup like Colorado. And I think that Montreal is a few years away from that, and I think that's the major reason why they saw value in trading Lehkonen when they did.
Yeah, and you know what? On the other side of that, we mentioned him in saying that there's going to be a lot of pressure on Justin Barron, but I think this team is handling the situation so well because, we saw him with the Canadians for a couple games. He scored an electrifying goal last year. I forget who it was against, but I remember just the footwork and he showed off his skating skills. It was just really unbelievable. And, and suffers an unfortunate injury, done for the season. And now, fully healthy, just lighting it up in Laval. And they're just saying, hey, just stay down there because there's just too many defensemen on this team right now. And, you're going to get your turn, but just keep doing your thing down there. And man, oh man, is he ever. I mean, 7 goals, I think it is. Yeah, 7 goals and 9 assists down with the Laval Rocket this year. It's 25 games. Just really, it looks like the Canadians' defense for the future between him, Jordan Harris, Mike Matheson, Caden Gooley, of course. It's just Arbor Jacki. The list goes on and on. It's just unbelievable what they have down the pipeline.
Yeah, and I think that looking at Barron and his time in the NHL last year before getting hurt, I think it's probably a disappointment for him that he got passed by Harris and Jacki and Gooley. And, you could probably picture, a couple of those guys passing him, but all 3 passing him, and then obviously Kovacevic being claimed on waivers as well. And I think that, look, he had a bad camp. He was tentative. He didn't really look very good. And even his time in Laval, when he started in Laval, he looked the same way. He didn't look like he wanted to have the puck. And then all of a sudden, a few games in, it just kind of switched. And he became one of the team's better defenders. And he's been in and out of the lineup a little bit recently because of a lower body injury. He didn't play tonight in Laval, but I think that the confidence that he's gaining in Laval, that's why the team's record doesn't really worry me, because the young players are showing confidence, and that's what you want from Laval right now. Would we feel better about the Laval Rocket if Alex Belzile and Brandon Gignac were leading the way? I don't think so, right? You'd want to see the young guys stepping up and playing well and developing, and I think that's what's happening despite the losses piling up. But yeah, Barron's night and day from preseason, and if people who are listening or watching to this who haven't really seen him play since preseason, completely different player. He really has stepped up his game. He's working with Adam Nicholas, which is everyone is, and I think it sounds crazy to say that the Canadians didn't focus on development up until this year, but it's a perfect time to start, and I think that's it's they don't have to rush him. They don't have to rush any of their prospects, really. They can take their time and kind of put them where they need to be. And I don't think they'd hesitate to bring Justin Barron up, but right now there's no need and no room for him, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But I expect that he'll be in the NHL at some point this year. But yeah, for now, it's a good start for him, I think, this year.
Well, yeah, and that's just the way it goes. Like you said, I expected to be in the NHL too. He'll get his turn because eventually, bodies are going to be shipped out at some point or another. Injuries are going to come into play. And hey, listen, if he doesn't look like an NHL defenseman right off the bat, no problem. You got to look at him. It's such an interesting year because we're in this weird purgatory where, you want to win because of the way they started and you want the young players to look good, but also like it kind of doesn't matter if they lose because the expectation wasn't really high at all coming into this season and kind of getting skewed after the start of the season that they have. So, I mean, just Justin Barron is an interesting one. I'm very excited to see him at some point in the NHL. But hey, and if it doesn't work out this year, that's fine. Just, go back down and keep working on it, put in the work during the summer. And I'm sure just with the small flash that we saw from him last year, players who could move their feet like that, there's no need to be worried about. They'll figure the rest out, right?
Yeah, and you have to think he was drafted the same year as Keaton Gooley. Like, he's still young. It's not like he's an older prospect, right? So he's still really young, and defenders. It's kind of weird to say because Montreal has so many young defensemen who are in the lineup and stepping up. But that's not the norm. That's not usually it does take time in the AHL, even though they have, 3 guys basically that that skip the AHL completely in Gooley, Harris, and Jack-Eye. So it's the slow road. Is not an issue, right? Like, patience is okay. It's what even before the year started, when there was questions about whether if Slafkovsky would go to the AHL or not. The players will dictate where they go, and if the player is not in the NHL, that doesn't mean that it's they're never going to get there, right? Like,
right.
that it's all part of development, and it's you look at Laval and guys like Raphael Harvey-Pinard and Jesse Ullinen, they're all down there, and they probably had just as good a chance as Anthony Richard being called up, and you see what he's done so far. And you've mentioned players getting shipped out, and I think there's a lot more potential in terms of forwards getting shipped out than maybe on defense. But I think that's something that's going to open up some spots as well, and it'll be very interesting to see what this team looks like heading into February, March, and after trade deadline.
Yeah, and like what I like to see is just the fact that a trade hasn't happened yet, because we've heard through the rumor mill that Edmonton is has some interest in Edmondson, and that they would be a perfect candidate, and I'm sure a lot of other teams are interested in him. And there was a stretch of 3 or 4 days when every team in the NHL was interested in Josh Anderson. It's I find with the base that this front office group just set, and the tone that they took when they came in, it's just, hey, this is going to take time, but we're not going to rush anything. But when we do make a move, there will be a reason for it. We're not just, making it because we have to. We're going to be fair, and we're going to analyze the crap out of every move. And that's the vibe I get. I mean, for all I know, they could not be doing that, but it's just, because when all these changes happen, I'm the type of guy that, as actually just to give everyone an update, because we've just been in on this conversation for so long, the Canadians are on the power play right now. There's 9:40 left on my clock in the game. So we'll see where this goes, but it's just the type of person I am, especially when it came to this new regime, was, they have no reason to not have my trust, because why would they not? Why would the most storied franchise in the NHL not put the best people in place? So just let them do their thing, or give them the benefit of the doubt on some things. I remember like the uproar when Tyler Toffoli got traded, and everyone's freaking out, and I'm just like, hey, everyone chill out. Like, they got a first round pick, they got a second round pick prospect. Like, it's gonna be fine. These things are gonna have to happen. And I don't know. I just feel so far, with the way that this team is and how they look, I just feel so good about them. Because at this point in the, they have 16 wins on the year. At this point of the season, last year they had 7. So, you're already doubling up. You're already doubling up on your progression there.
Yeah, and the thing that strikes me is, look, I'm with you. Like, there's no reason to be pessimistic at this point with how this regime is taking care of things. But the one thing that's clear is that whether or not it works, they have a plan, right? Like, everything they do is cohesive, and that's not something that happened under Marc Bergevin. It's not something that happened under Pierre Gauthier. Like it's been so long since this has happened with the Montreal Canadiens that it's kind of like whiplash a little bit.
Yeah.
where like it's like, wait, we're everyone here like, oh, they're not going to take Slafkovsky. That's crazy. They're going to take the center, and then they take Slafkovsky, and then 10 minutes later they trade for Kirby Dach.
Trade for
like, oh, okay, there we go. Now it makes sense. And I think that all these things kind of line up with each other, and it's nice to have a plan in place and have that kind of everything makes sense, right? And even if it doesn't make sense at first, it eventually makes sense throughout the night, or throughout the way things are going. Like getting Sean Monahan out of nowhere is a move
for literally nothing.
For and a first round pick, right? Like
exactly.
And it's just creativity that we never saw under Marc Bergevin. Like, how many years did he have millions of dollars of cap space that he never used, right? And I think that there's just I'm not using this time to rail on Marc Bergevin. It's just it's a cohesive plan focused on development, which is what they have. Marc Bergevin and Trevor Timmins left this organization with a lot of good prospects. I don't think that should be unsaid. Like they've had a lot of good prospects. Cole Caulfield, Keaton Gooley, Nick Suzuki, those are all guys that were brought in by Marc Bergevin. And I think that surrounding them with more draft picks, which, again, a lot of them were acquired by Bergevin, but obviously Kent Hughes added a lot more. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to watch how this all comes together. And not only that, but they're going to have a lot of players, right? They're going to have a lot of prospects. They're going to have to, trade some prospects that probably are going to be NHLers. And isn't that a refreshing change from a few years ago when they're like, will anybody be an NHLer? Brett Lernout, Charles Hudon, will one of you?
Yeah, I remember those days.
So it's definitely like I said, it's definitely whiplash, but I think that this is what's going to happen. Like they have 6-7 players in the World Juniors, and Slafkovsky's not even there. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these prospects develop. And it's kind of funny because even as soon as next year, you could have a lot more young players. Like you're going to have Joshua Roy in the AHL. Riley Kidney is going to be there. Maybe Sean Farrell. Philip Machar is probably going to be playing pro next year. That's a lot of. You're going to have 2 first-round picks this year too. There's a lot of. Owen Beck could be in the NHL next year for all we know. Like he almost made it this year. It's going to be a very interesting thing because a lot of prospects who look good and will be in the NHL are going to be passed by other prospects. And that kind of internal competition is good. You see it on the defense now, right? All the young guys are kind of fighting for a spot. And now obviously with the injuries, it's a little easier to get everybody playing time, but it's good because, as much as you want to be attached to specific players, all that you care about really is getting guys to the NHL and getting the best. And that's what an organization needs to do.
Well, again, it's just, it's not, and I agree with you. It's not to rag on Marc Bergevin or anything, but it's, you could talk about it as, most of the teams in the NHL, at least, it's changing a lot with the way that, that teams are hiring GMs and presidents of hockey ops, is that, they run this team like a business because one of the easiest, at least in my opinion, I've never been an NHL GM. I'm probably not qualified to make this comment, but hey, I'm going to do it anyways, which one of the easiest things about the job of being a GM, I would think, is analyzing talent in the NHL right now. Who would be a fit for my team right now? That's got to be one of the easier jobs, among many. It's not, I'm not saying it's objectively easy. I'm saying amongst the millions of things that they do, that has to be at the top of the list of some of the easiest. That's what Marc Bergevin was best at, and then when it came to making trades, he was one of his biggest faults he made some very good trades. You got to credit him. Philip Deneau, getting him from Chicago, that's, what more needs to be said? That was a fantastic deal. But when it comes to maximizing assets, that was a huge pitfall for him. He let how many players walk for absolutely nothing. And, he got personal between players, and that's fine. Everyone has a different style of management, but the part that I didn't like was the asset management. And, you brought it up and it clicked in my head when you said it, right when they took Slavkovsky, traded Romanov for a pick and then traded that pick for Kirby Dach. I mean, that's crazy. This is like we're playing NHL 23 on Xbox One, who is this guy pulling a move like that? And it's things like that are just such encouraging signs from this management team that I just love to see.
Yeah. It's funny because that was the day that Chicago traded Alex DeBrincat, and people were talking about Kirby Dach being moved, but Montreal was never mentioned in those talks. Like it was a complete shock when his name was announced. I remember running from the draft press conference room, waiting to talk to Slavkovsky, and the Montreal media were all waiting there, and then all of a sudden there was whispers like Romanov, and people were like, what? There's trade, and then everyone just sprints to the Zamboni entrance to kind of see what's going on, and so it's fun to see Kent Hughes not be afraid, right? And Jeff Gorton was never afraid of that either. Like I think that there's a confidence in this group, and again, I'm not saying it's guaranteed to work, but so far the returns look good. And it's just nice to see a plan, right? Like they go get Kirby Dach not only because he's a 21-year-old center, but because they feel that their player development will be able to to get the best out of him. In a way, it's the reverse of what happened with Jesperi Kotkaniemi just a year earlier, where they lose a 21-year-old because another team wants to take a chance on him and try and develop him because they felt Montreal wasn't doing it, and the player didn't feel like Montreal was doing it. So it's interesting to me to see these moves being made, and I'm very curious how it's going to go with this trade deadline, because there's a lot of players who look like potential to be traded. You mentioned Edmondson, you mentioned Anderson. Those would be the guys like the Toffoli and the Lekkonens where they don't have to trade them. But then you have the guys who are on expiring contracts. And the weird thing about that is that those are the guys that don't really have much trade value right now.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And, there's going to be, there's a cap crunch in the NHL right now. Let's not hide the fact, but I think what's going to happen and what's going to happen with the Canadiens is that the closer you get to the trade deadline, the more you can hide on the cap, the more you can retain. And there's things that you can do to kind of be creative, especially if they trade some of their bigger salaries out, and they're not worried about cap space. Like, they don't get they're over the cap like crazy right now, but they know that Carey Price is not coming back this year. They know that Paul Byron's probably not going to come back this year, so they can use that LTIR space and just kind of see what's going to happen. And look, at the end of the year, if they can't trade Evgeny Dadonov, or if they can't, they don't trade Sean Monahan, they might even re-sign him. Doesn't make a difference. They got the first round pick with Monahan, so they already kind of got the package for a rental. The Dadonov was to get rid of the Weber contract. Like it's cap space. It means nothing. Like their salaries this year doesn't mean anything. I'm not Jeff Molson. I'm not paying their salaries.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make a difference. If when they become free agents in a year, if they don't trade them, it's okay, because they have all those assets, right? They have so many picks in this draft. They're always going to look for options, and I think that it's refreshing to see an organization that's going all in and believes in themselves. And I feel like for Mark Bergevin did a lot of good things, but I think his fatal flaw was not understanding what gave the team success. And I don't think there's any better example of that than following up the Stanley Cup final with the offseason that he had. Getting rid of, not re-signing Deno, not re-signing Tatar, thinking Mike Hoffman could replace Tatar. He didn't replace Deno until he also lost Kotkaniemi and then had to trade for Christian Dvorak. Like, it's just, there was no, losing Shea Weber and then getting David Savard. Like, there's no indication of cohesion. And I think that offseason really showed that, for all what he did is he did a lot of good things, but it was very, very apparent in that offseason that he was not going to be around for the fruits of the draft picks and the development that he was bringing onto the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give everyone an update on the game, they just showed a replay of Cale Makar. He took a bit of a spill. Looks like he had a little bit of a chat with the trainer, but he's back on the ice. Just what an incredible talent he is. As there's 2 minutes left in the third period. This is crazy. This game feels like the fastest game of all time. Also, just this conversation is making the game go by way quicker. It's not exactly the same type of game as it was on Monday night when we had the watch along in the first period. That I needed the watch along because that was just really bad, that first period. Hey, ended up turning out well for the Canadians. This game kind of happening in a similar fashion, getting outshot by 35-19. But listen, they're sticking around, and I find at least that the biggest storm that they weathered in this game happened in the second period. It happened at the beginning of the second period. That was like, wow, okay, Colorado is going to score any minute here if you don't do something. They didn't. So now they're still in it 1-1, as they usually are. I mean, this team just finds ways to just always be in it no matter what. And that's got to be, you just got to think of it from an opponent's perspective. That's got to be so annoying. Like like Colorado is almost doubling the Canadians in shots, and it's 1-1, and that's a credit to the team game that they play, but mostly a credit to Jake Allen. And on Monday night, a huge credit to Samuel Montembeault.
Yeah. Goaltending was probably the biggest reason why they finished last year, right? Like, how many games did they, Dominic Ducharme gets a lot of blame, and I'm not here to absolve him of much of that. But at the same time, how many times last year were they down 2-0 5 minutes into a game, right? I feel like they got scored on in bunches, and the first few shots of a game, and how do you bounce back from that when it happens all the time? Like, it just felt like the first 10 minutes of every game they were down 2-0. And that's hard for a team to deal with. And you see it this year when Allen or Montembeault, and more Allen, I guess, because Montembeault has been playing better than Allen this year. But Allen's had an up and down season. When he's off, there's not much that you can do to help bad goaltending, right? You can't do anything about that. And so I think that getting good goaltending that they're getting now is, you can talk about Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and the points and the goals that they're putting up, but the goaltending is probably the factor of why they're not battling for last place, because there was no way it was going to be as bad as it was last year. And
no, I completely agree. There's no way. I mean, just to go back to the Dominic Ducharme thing just for a second quickly, because there was a lot of things wrong with the team first before the coaching, but again, just a stark difference between this year and last year. And I get it. I mean, Dominic Ducharme said at least that his mandate was to coach to win, and that's fine. If that's your mandate, you're going to coach a certain style. Martin St. Louis, for example, his mandate is not to win right now. It's to develop the players. But to me, I mean, there is still some sort of level of accountability you have to take. And, I've spoken to a couple people that have said that have pinpointed their moment as this game is actually going to 3-on-3 overtime. Probably the two Well, the two of the more entertaining teams to go see in 3-on-3, so that's going to be fun. But you know, the moment that I pinpoint, I've heard when it was, Josh Anderson saying it's not fun to come to the rink anymore, and just Jeff Petrie constantly moping in front of the camera. He clearly was not enjoying playing hockey. But to me, the kiss of death for this team, where I was literally laughing in my car listening to his press conference when the Canadians played the Edmonton Oilers. I think they lost like 6-1 or 7-1.
I know what this is going.
And the comment that he made was, he was asked, just how do you evaluate this performance tonight? And he goes, or something along the lines of that. And I'm going to paraphrase what he said here, but I think I got it spot on. He said, well, if you told me before the game that we would have held Connor McDavid to 2 shots on goal and no points, say we did a pretty good job. And I'm just like, man, you just got smacked 7-1. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, to me, that was the moment where I said, okay, this guy's lost it. He doesn't, I'm not going to say he doesn't care anymore, because, you got to care to be in this league at any level. But like, that's when I was like, okay, this guy's, he just lost this room, because you can't say that after you lose 6-1.
Yeah. And you mentioned, that he was mandated to win. And yes, that might have been true. And maybe, the communication wasn't there when, Jeff Gorton took over. Again, we're not in the room. We don't know what's going on. But having said that, I can't think of one thing that Dominic Ducharme tried to get the team to win more games. I literally cannot think of one thing. And you mentioned it, like going into January with 7 wins, like you have to try things to. And yes, there were injuries. Yes, there were issues, but there was nothing that was being tried system wise or anything that could be like, oh, you know what, he's trying to do something. And I think that was as big a flaw as anything. Like, it's kind of like that Simpsons meme where it's like we've tried nothing, we're all out of ideas, and that's kind of how I feel with how Dominic Ducharme ended his tenure. And it's kind of weird, because I was a fan of Ducharme's. I covered him at a couple of World Juniors during the camps that were in Montreal, and you get an appreciation for him, and it just didn't click. And some of that is maybe what's come out afterwards, and that people didn't really want him to be the coach in that room and things like that. And that's all speculation, but at the same time, it doesn't take a coaching genius to try something else when your team has won 7 games by January. Like that's the biggest thing, is like, he didn't try anything. It was just trying the same thing over again, or putting Caulfield on the 4th line again. Like, no, it wasn't working. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that once Martin St. Louis took over, and you see it this year as well, is that even when things aren't working out, they're at least being there's attempts of things happening, right? Like,
and there's a level of accountability, like
yes.
they come out and they stink up the room. They're gonna, he nipped it in the butt. He said, like, we can't do that. We cannot go out there and play like that. Let's just table the conversation, because the 3-on-3 is underway. Some good talent on the ice. Arturi Lehkonen is now on the ice for the Avalanche. The Canadians started with, at least, Suzuki, Caulfield, and Gouli, which that's just, you want to talk to future right there, and just, wow, what a move by Jonathan Drouin there. That's a great attempt to no avail, but you got to love that effort. As the Canadians are now caught, and I don't know where you are on your stream, but I don't want to ruin it for you, but I will. The Canadians just lost on a 2-on-1. Devin Taves scores the winner. No, it was Mikko Rantanen. So there you go. Canadians lose in overtime. Again, just one of those games where they hung around, they managed to steal a point, and standings aside, this is who cares? They're pretty much, they're out of the Bedard race. Like, forget about Bedard at this point. It's a pipe dream to, at least, they're not really out of it, because anyone could win the lottery, but
right.
Just forget about trying to get the best odds for him at this point. It's not going to happen. They're too far ahead of the curve right now. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it just because there's trust in the process, in the way that they're doing things, and that's got to, that this game has got to give confidence in the room. I don't care that they were riddled with injury, and Mikko Rantanen was the premier player, and he's a fantastic player. It's nothing against him. He's the premier player on this team right now, but you just went toe-to-toe with the Stanley Cup champs. You forced them into overtime where, you're one bounce away from stealing a victory.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jonathan Drouin. I mean, he was a couple of inches away from scoring a goal. The goal was, the puck was basically on the goal line. And look, that's the whole thing. Is that, and you kind of see the standings taking shape. Montreal is going to probably be in the bottom 7 or 8 teams. They're going to have a top 10 pick, at least one. Who knows where Florida's pick is going to end up as well, right? So I think that in this draft, being in the top 10 is perfectly fine. I don't think that, it's not like they're going to be picking like 15, 16 in with their pick and just missing the playoffs and in that kind of like limbo zone. I think it's pretty clear they're going to be in, it depends on teams like Vancouver and Nashville and where they end up as well, obviously. But I think Ottawa is going to pass them. I think Buffalo is going to pass them. And I don't think that Montreal is going to be able to get back up there. So it's going to stabilize. They'll be in the bottom 7 or 8, and that's perfectly fine. Like, that's not too good. They still have a decent shot at the lottery as well. Look, I've said it before. Good teams find good players, no matter where you pick in the first round. Like Tampa's been drafting in the bottom part of the round for years, and they still find good players. Like good organizations find good players. Montreal is a good example of that last year, right? Getting Owen Beck, Lane Hudson in the second round. Like, good teams find good players, and Montreal just hasn't really done that in the past. So, but look at the lineup now. Cole Caulfield was 15th overall. Caden Gooley was 16th overall. Like, you can hit on those picks. Matt Barzal was a mid first round pick. Like, these players are there. It's just a matter of picking the right ones. And
well, just to jump in, look no further. The Canadians, I mean, unfortunately for Marc Bergevin, did it, in the last couple of years of his tenure in Montreal, because, Caden Gooley, 16th overall, Cole Caulfield, 15th overall. These players are out there. So, while you're not going to get the generational talent that is going to be, Connor Bedard and Adam Fantilli, Michkov, whatever, man. It's, Connor McDavid hasn't won a Stanley Cup yet. Neither has Leon Draisaitl, and they play on the same goddamn team. So, it's sure, it helps, but like, look at Austin Matthews. He pulled the Leafs forward, 3-4 years they probably had 3-4 years left in that rebuild. They got first overall, pulled him out of it. They still haven't been able to find their way out of the first round. So it just, nothing's a guarantee. It's a team sport for a reason. And like you said, the good teams will find the good players. And, you mentioned the name of Lane Hudson. He is just ripping it up right now in college hockey. And that's a fantastic thing to see. It's funny that he had he had to mention that his bones were still growing in the draft, in his draft interview. I thought that was funny, but it's nice to see that they're just on the right track. This team will find good players.
Yeah, and it's not only finding good players, it's also developing the players you do find to the best of their abilities. And I think that's something we haven't even seen yet. The benefits of Adam Nicholas and Marie-Philippe Poulin and Scott Pellerin and the player development group, that is going to be such a huge asset in terms of skills development. And you're seeing it already with Juraj Slafkovsky, with just the improvements that he's showing this season, specific things he's working with Adam Nicholas on that he's showing in games. And I think that is that's the thing that's going to make things even better, is that, yes, they have all these prospects. They're coming up, and like I mentioned, the Rois and the Kidneys are going to turn pro soon. And it's not only getting those first round picks to hit, but also like the Canadians, the only prospects to really succeed in Montreal were the ones that could not fail, right? Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield. That's Carey Price, I guess.
Well, I mean, and you could kind of take Nick Suzuki out of there because he wasn't drafted by the Habs, right?
No,
so
but I mean, he was developed by them, right? Like he and Jesperi Kotkaniemi kind of were on the same path, and one went one way and one went the other, and having specialized development paths is going to be useful as opposed to just basically was sink or swim for a long time. Alex Galchenyuk was the same way. Alex Galchenyuk scored 40 goals in the NHL or 30 goals in the NHL. He was a 30 goal scorer. That bad players don't score 30 goals in the NHL.
Yeah, exactly.
And then just Jesperi Kotkaniemi, his first year was very good, but what didn't happen? No improvement. They for whatever reason he couldn't. Whether it was the player or the direction of the developments team, they just never can get them to take the next step. And I think what you're seeing here is a focus on helping players, even in the NHL, developing and growing, and that's what teams do now, and it's refreshing to see the Montreal Canadiens focus on that.
Yeah, it is. And what was really refreshing was this conversation, because I feel like we could keep it going all night, but I love that. I loved our conversation tonight. And I look forward to chatting with you again at some point, because I mean, we hit it off right away. We didn't even get to chit chat before the show started. And we just off we went, 1 minute into this period. So Jared, thank you very much for joining us. But before I let you go, just tell everyone what you're up to and where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, HabsEyesOnThePrize.com is the website. We have a great group, and focus. The World Juniors are starting up. We'll have a lot of coverage of that. Obviously, the Canadians and the Rocket, and stuff like that as well will continue to happen. So, yeah, the website is getting ready to be. It's our busy time of the year between World Juniors and the January starting up. It's gonna be fun.
Wonderful time to be a sports fan. The World Cup just ended, and you're getting World Juniors right after. Jared, thanks a lot for joining me, and have a great rest of your night, and happy holidays.
Thanks for having me. Happy holidays.
All right, that was Jared Book. Now it's time for You Called.
You Called. Presented by Playground.
Called is brought to you by Playground, your premier gaming destination, just located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. All right, Sammy Naniello, pop a question up for me, and I'm going to give it my best shot here. So this one's from John on Facebook. Do you think the regime will win the Stanley Cup? This regime will win a Stanley Cup? Truthfully, listen, I always said I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. And, even when I worked in professional media, I never shied away from that. I think that, being brought up in this city, watching the Canadiens every day, 82 games a year for 25 years of my life, you can't just take away being a fan. It's kind of in my DNA. So I'm going to try to answer this objectively as possible. But I really think they will. And the reason why I think they will is because they're going to have time to do it. And even if they, even if Jeff Molson said, you got 3 years to turn the ship around, then not so much. I wouldn't have confidence, because that's from the top. That's all the way at the top. But it looks like Jeff Molson is going to be incredibly patient with this group of this duo of Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton. And I think that they're going to do great things. I mean, you're seeing the fruits of the labor right now of Jeff Gorton in New York. And, the New York Rangers are one of the best teams in the NHL. That, they went on a little bit of a playoff run last year. It's incredible to watch. And, the deals that he pulled off, Jeff Gorton was able to bring Mika Zibanejad over to New York. And he's just he's frankly, top 20 player. And that's probably me being a little, generous. I could probably even go sharper and say top 15 player in the NHL. So I have a feeling those moves are coming. We saw a move already in bringing in Kirby Dach. It's bringing a lot of success right now. I know everything's lovey-dovey right now, and it's easy to say yes and just say that for sure they're going to bring a cup here because we're the Montreal Canadiens. That's what they do. They win cups. Well, they haven't won a cup since I've been alive. So I really do have a deep belief in this ownership group, or I shouldn't say ownership group, I should say management group. Deep belief in them, and I really like what they're doing. And it's going to take time. Nathan McKinnon was drafted first overall, I think, 2014 or 2015, and he won his first Stanley Cup in 2022. So, these things take time, and just be patient, and good things are going to happen. And as a side note, I did make a lifetime bet with a friend who is a Sabres fan, and I bet him $1,000. We have it in the notes app in the phone that we bet $1,000 that I said the Canadiens will win a Stanley Cup before the Buffalo Sabres, and he said nope. The Buffalo Sabres are going to win a Stanley Cup before the Montreal Canadiens do. So that's how much belief I have in this management group. All right, next question. I don't know about New York. Did Gorton really have anything to do with Fox or Panarin? Or was it that they just wanted to play there? Everyone is high on this group. I'm neutral, I think, still. And you know what? That's completely fair. That's completely fair. We just went through, I think it was 8 or 9 years of Marc Bergevin when, at the beginning, it was very lovey-dovey. And, Michel Therrien, when he was brought in as coach, Canadians looked pretty good, and then they looked not so good, but then they looked really good again. It's completely fair. And, did those guys just want to go play in New York? Also entirely possible, but there's no real tax benefit to playing in New York, like Florida or anything else. So, or any other southern state. So I sure, maybe they wanted to go play in a big market team, but Panarin, I mean, he played in Chicago. He played in a big market. So, the Canadiens are one of the biggest markets in the NHL. Yeah, they're in Canada, and our winters are freezing, but I don't know. I think, it's up to, for a college player like Adam Fox for a second, that's up to the management team to, show off the goods of the organization, as it is with a free agent. Show off the goods of the organization, and everything's situational. But a young player, you got to sell to that young player that not only are we on the right track to winning a Stanley Cup, but you're going to be a part of that, and we're going to make you a centerpiece as a part of that. So that's probably why Adam Fox went to New York. Probably, maybe there were other outside connections to Hughes and Gorton. I don't know. These guys seem to know everyone in the business. So it's a fair point. I respect it that you're neutral right now, because we're only a year into this thing. So, completely understandable that you're neutral and they haven't grown on you yet and they haven't earned your trust. Let's go. Next question. Why Hoffman and Jonathan Drouin out there? That was during the overtime. I saw that comment come in from Kev. Listen, they started off with Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Caden Gooley. They rolled out Kirby Dach. I didn't really see who he was playing with when Dach was on the ice. You just got to roll your talented players. And hey, Hoffman scored on Monday in overtime. So, you can't just play Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield for the entire 3-on-3. Your legs go pretty quickly when you're skating back and forth up the ice. You got to play your guys. That's just what it comes down to. And hey, in space, we know that Drouin is one of the most skilled players in the NHL. And we know that in space, if you give him time, Mike Hoffman is going to pick his spot and just rifle one into a corner because he has just a phenomenal shot. That overtime goal that went in on Monday night, 87 miles an hour on a snapshot. That's crazy. A lot of players can't even hit that on a slap shot, let alone a snapshot. So that's why they're out there. You just got to play your guys. Tony, Sammy and Yellow, pop another one up for me. Do you think Martin St. Louis will be the same type of coach once they need to start winning? That one's from Ethan. I love this question. And I'm going to tell you why I love this question. Because I agree with you. His mandate isn't to coach. And that's when that question popped up when Jared and I were talking about, the different mandate between Martin St. Louis and Dominic Ducharme. The reason why I love this question is because this is an incredibly young team. His mandate is to develop the players and help them along. Well, again, I always say it. I've said it the past 2 or 3 times I've been on the air, talking to you guys, is that Martin St. Louis is growing with this team as well. They're learning how to win. He's learning how to win. But he knows how to win as a player because he's won it all, and he almost won it all twice. He almost won it again with New York near the tail end of his career when they knocked the Canadiens out of the third round. And I think it was in 2014. So, yeah, he's going to be the right coach because this locker room answers to him. The only thing is a raw guy can get very old very quickly, but I think he's managing that well, and we're seeing that now. We're kind of seeing that we're seeing that he, while the Canadiens lose, he doesn't care that they're losing. He cares in the fashion that they lose. And we saw that a bunch of games. It started with the game against Ottawa. He got pissed off and spoke to the media the way he did about the refereeing, but then they lost again against LA. And then he went out and then they lost the next night. And then when they lost against LA, he got frustrated and he said, the way we're losing is unacceptable. Then they lost to Tampa Bay. Again, just unacceptable behavior. And when you're holding players accountable, you're still you're that guy. You are that guy. And he wasn't just brought in to be a stopgap coach. I think he's going to be here for a while. When this team is ready to win and they start winning games and they start making pushes to the playoffs, and the management group feels like they're underperforming, then we'll have a bit of an issue. But until then, he's going to grow with these players. And I think they're building a good thing right now. And I think he is the right coach, even when they are ready to start winning. All right. We got time for maybe one more. So let's pick one here. I just wish Hudson had a right shot. All are good D, but they're all lefties. Right. So I don't know. I was never really one to buy into this. Like, listen, I'm not a coach. So frankly, and to be honest with you, I never really played hockey because I never learned how to skate. So I don't know. I feel like we put too much stock into this left shot, right shot kind of thing. The player will play on the side he's more comfortable playing on. And, just that's what it is. The player will play it. The coach is going to recognize whoever the coach is will recognize what their strengths are. And, if they can play on the left side, even though they're left shot or right shot or however it's done, I don't think that makes all that much of a difference. Really all this lefty, righty talk kind of be left shot, right shot kind of came into talks when Babcock was in Toronto, and he was doing that because he did that with Team Canada in 2014. Before that, we didn't really hear any of that talk. So I don't know. I don't think that is too important. If you could play the game, you could play the game. One more. We got time for one more. So let's do this thing. Tony Black on Facebook says, "Do you prefer them losing and getting a higher draft pick?" I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, on paper, if they're going to be in every game and then lose and lose them and get a higher draft pick, that would be fine and dandy. But like Jared and I were talking about, good teams find good players. You don't need a generational talent on your team to win a Stanley Cup. They probably generational talents will win a Stanley Cup, but let's not pretend like they didn't have a great supporting cast around them. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, when they won their first Stanley Cup, that team, it wasn't just them two. Yeah, they both had, 100+ points or whatever it was, but they also had Dan Bylsma, who was one of the best coaches in the NHL at that point. And they also had Marc-Andre Fleury, who was right now, he's a Hall of Fame goaltender, and he was playing at the top of his game. They had a young Chris Letang, who was one of the most prolific scoring defensemen in the NHL. Good teams will find those good players, and it doesn't always have to be the generational talent. You don't got to look any further than, again, we said it before, and we'll I'll say the names again. Cole Caulfield was a 15th overall pick, and Caden Gooley was a 16th overall pick. Arbor Jacki looks like a really good player. I think he was undrafted. So you don't really need all those generational guys to win a Stanley Cup. Sure, they help. They're nice, but I don't know. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Would it have been nice? Yeah, but also I think what we're seeing on the ice is a lot more encouraging than prospects. I think a lot of people get really excited about prospects, and rightfully so when the word generational talent gets thrown around. But the Canadiens got a really good thing going for them right now, and I think that the better path to success right now would be to just continue on the road that you are, build that pool, keep bringing in talent, develop that talent, and that's winning the right way, in my opinion, at least. A Connor Bedard could fast track you, sure, but a fast track could also lead you off the track that you're on. So I don't know. There's different ways of building teams, but again, just to bring it all back, it would be nice if they were in all these games and would lose all of them, sure. But I think it's encouraging that they're winning games in the fashion that they are and in the volume that they are. So that's just about going to do it for us. Just one last reminder. So shop all your sports licensed lifestyle apparel, including hoodies, caps, and tees of your favorite teams from all major leagues, as well as our sick merch at sportsbuffshop.com. Use code SICK10 for 10% off all their items. Look at this sweater. This thing is clean. Hold on, let me get you on this side. This thing is clean. It's comfy. Sammy and Yellow, you guys did a great job with the design. I like it. It's classic. It's comfortable. I don't just wear it when I'm on the podcast. I wear this out and about because it's a comfy sweater. It's warm. It's good. So use the code SICK10 to get 10% off all of their items. That's going to do it for me. Tony, again, you saw the report out. You saw the injury report out day to day. So he might be back tomorrow. You might have me again. I don't know. So we'll see tomorrow night. We'll see what tomorrow brings. But that's it for me tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll catch you again later.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different, 8.6, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.